Testing, testing. Good morning and welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for December 7th, 2022. Before we begin today, I'd like to recognize one of our newest employees, Tyrese Cox. Tyrese, are you with us? No, she's not with us today, but she's probably watching on screen. She joined the Consumer Affairs Division last week. I had the pleasure of meeting with her, and she is on our compliance and enforcement team. She has worked for many years in state service, including the Department of Social Services, the Department of Health, as well as the Baltimore City school system, where she worked on COVID prevention issues with the youngins. Additionally, she has had some bachelor's work in business administration as well as hospitality management. In her spare time, she helps feeds the homeless, and she's a cook, so she brings them the food, her culinary skills that she puts to the test, particularly her specialty is soul food. She left me with a quote that she would like to share, and she says that her motto, her inspiration is that she believes that a little bit of kindness and love goes a long way, and we could always use a little bit more of that. So I know the Consumer Affairs Division is thrilled to have her on staff, not only for her experience and contributions along the way, but probably also for her contributions to the holiday potlucks. So Tyrese, welcome to the Public Service Commission.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Before we start the official record, today is December 7th, and as President Franklin Delano Roosevelt historically remarked, it is a date which shall live in infamy. It's a date that thousands of Americans died in a sneak attack on this nation, and we should never, ever forget this day. You'll see flags flying at half-mast across this nation today in memorial to that sacrifice.
Thank you for that recognition, Commissioner O'Donnell. A somber date, indeed. On a much lighter note, cupcakes. Everybody loves cupcakes. The Maryland Charity Campaign is quickly coming to an end. It's been near and dear to my heart over the past 4 or 5 years. And for our PSC employees, we have a cupcake charity event today at 11:30 to 1 o'clock. I would encourage everybody to buy a cupcake. I also want to thank the leadership of Latangia Bunch up in Engineering Division. Latangia has been excellent this year, leading our campaign and bringing us to what I believe will be a successful conclusion next week. With that, we do have meeting minutes to approve from our last meeting on November 30th, 2022. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The meeting minutes are approved. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. There are 5 items on today's consent agenda. Item number 1 is a joint application of transfer of control from Entrado Corporation and Guardian U.S. Holdco LLC. And items number 2 through 5 are requests for certification of renewable energy facilities from DC Water and Sewer Authority.
Thank you. We'll turn to questioning from the commissioners. I turn to Commissioner O'Donnell. Commissioner O'Donnell, which items would you like to call?
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions. I just left my microphone on. Excuse
Oh.
me. I think Commissioner Linton has some questions.
Yeah. Oh, did I say O'Donnell? I meant Linton.
No, it's all
Commissioner
right.
Linton.
As
Yes.
we all know, it happens often. I think it's the hair. Just a couple of questions. Good morning, everyone. A couple of questions for the authority or staff, whomever is available.
Can we have both staff and the DC Water Authority approach the respective podiums? DC Water on the right.
Good morning. So I guess I'll start with the authority. You filed an application for a certification of the heat with the District of Columbia in September. Are you able to give us an update on that filing?
Yes, Commissioner, I can. The applications for all of these systems were approved by the District of Columbia Public Service Commission. I apologize. I do not have the precise date, but it was within the last 4 weeks.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Second question, and this could go for either the staff or the authority. You've filed for 4 different requests for certification here for the same, roughly for the same facility. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, thank you. The short answer is that these four systems, while they're all subcomponents of the same broader facility, have different fundamental purposes within that facility. And as they are metered individually, and they may or may not be doing more work at any given time, we felt it was more appropriate to report the data individually and to supply specific values for each subsystem, both within the reporting system and in the paperwork we filed with the Commission. I think it would have been reasonable to do them all as one and add it all together. This meant more paperwork, but it does mean we are able to provide a more precise accounting of exactly what energy we are able to generate.
Okay, thank you. And just for the staff, good morning. Did you have any concerns with the authority requesting 4 separate certifications as opposed to 1?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Andrew Schlicht on the behalf of staff. No, Commissioner, we do not have any concerns with this being separated into 4 different filings.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all
Thank
I
you,
have.
Commissioner Linton. Linton, that's your name. And Mr. Schlick, this is your first appearance before the commission, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I got some questions. Mr. Schlick, I just say welcome to the commission. We're glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any additional questions? No, thank you, Council. I will move that with respect to item number 1, that we note the applicant's transfer of control. With respect to the DC Water and Sewer Authority items number 2, 3, 4, and 5, I move that we approve the applications and issue renewable energy facility ID certification numbers, direct the DC Water and Sewer Authority to establish a REC account with PJM GATS within 30 days of the certification, and file an on-site and behind-the-meter generation report with the Commission within 1 week of each recording of generation data with GATS. And finally, direct the applicant to notify the Commission within 30 days if the information on which the application is based should change. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motions are approved. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, item number 6 on the administrative agenda is an application from Maryland American Water Company to issue long-term bonds.
Thank you. Good morning to our staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Evan Thomas on behalf of staff. On October 14th, 2022, Maryland American Water Company filed an application for authority to issue $7.5 million in long-term debt. The debt would be used prior to December 31st, 2024 to repay all or a portion of its outstanding short-term debt and for the purchase, acquisition, and/or construction of additional properties and facilities, as well as improvements to the company's existing utility plant. Under Public Utilities Article Section 6-101A2 and 6-102B, a public service company that operates in Maryland may not, without prior commission authorization, issue debt that is payable wholly or partly more than 12 months after the date is issued. The information in the application and in Maryland American Water's responses to questions posed by staff regarding the anticipated use of the funds that would be raised by the proposed debt issuance satisfies the standards of the Code of Maryland Regulations and the Public Utilities Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland. Staff recommends that the Commission grant this application and issue a final order in compliance with COMAR 20.070402C, authorizing Maryland American Water to issue up to $7.5 million in long-term debt. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. $7.5 million is not insignificant. We appreciate your recommendation. Do we have counsel for American Water with us today? No, we don't. Mr. Thomas, did American Water tell you their whereabouts today?
They did not.
Okay.
Chairman.
All right. Thank you. I'll turn to my colleagues. Commissioner Bubar.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan. I think this might be your first time in front of the commission. And I'd just like to recognize that American Water hosted us at their facility in Bel Air back a month or so ago. And I think it was Evan's second day on the job. So I think the timing of you being able to see their operations in person was probably very helpful in you preparing this. But I don't have any questions. I just wanted to recognize you.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Thomas, I hope you don't think you're going to get off the hook easier than Mr. Schlick did.
I figure not.
Welcome to the commission, Mr. Thomas.
Noting American Water's absence, any additional questions? Seeing none, I would move that we authorize the company to issue up to $7.5 million of long-term debt. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 7 consists of the 2023 STRIDE project list and associated surcharges from Elkton Gas Company.
Do we have counsel for Elkton Gas? Good morning, Mr. Quinn. Good morning, Ms. Garofalo.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Annette Garofalo on behalf of Commission staff, appearing today with Adesina Jaola of the Engineering Division, Mark Riley of the Accounting Investigations Division, and Huilan Lee of the Office of the Executive Director. Elkton Gas is a wholly owned subsidiary of Chesapeake Utilities Corporation, and it has filed its proposed 2023 STRIDE project list and surcharge proposal as required by order number 89931, issued August 20th, 2021, in case number 9660. Elkton's STRIDE program was begun last year and focuses on the replacement and upgrade of aging Adelaide A pipes and associated facilities. 4 of its 7 proposed 2022 projects were completed in 2022. In 2023, the company proposes to complete an additional 1.01 miles of main and to replace 100 services. The STRIDE surcharge rates for 2023 have been set at the caps, and staff recommends the Commission approve of the company's 2023 project list and accept Elkton's STRIDE surcharges for filing. Mr. Yahola and Mr. Riley and Ms. Lee are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Garofalo, and the team behind you. Mr. Quinn, good morning. Anything to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, it's my first time before the commission today, so I'm just very excited to be here.
Somebody's looking to get hazed. I don't believe Commissioner O'Donnell would go as easy.
Should not have said that. No, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of Elkton, Brian Quinn, I have some representatives of the company here if you have any operational questions or accounting questions, and we agree with staff's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Quinn, when was the last time Elkton filed a base rate case?
It's before we only acquired the system 2 years ago, and we have not filed one since. But as part of that acquisition, there's a commitment to come in to file, and those dates were adjusted. So Elkton will be in for a rate case in 2024.
2024, okay. So at that time, we should anticipate a prudency review and the resetting of the surcharge.
Yes, sir, Commissioner O'Donnell. And this is a modest program for Elkton. There's 13 total projects on the list. They've completed 7 already, and the 6 that are there's 6 are remaining to be completed this year. They're all smaller size projects, but for one. So
Very good. Well, today is my first day on this bench, so I'm going to ask you some other questions. Thank you.
Just want to say hi to Calvert County. Sorry.
Commissioner Bubar.
Maybe you just answered this question, but the projects that are proposed for the 2023 surcharge looks as if you expect them to be completed, but there are 2022 projects that ran into delays, so just wonder if you could explain
Yes,
your
ma'am.
level of confidence.
Yes, Commissioner Bubar, and I have Josh Denham from the company here who can back me up on any of this, but I just asked him some questions about supply chain issues or any delays. Actually, there are 3 projects that are active this year that would have already been completed, but for the ones that staff mentioned, one is going to be completed, no problem. The 2 were delayed by the difficulty of the labor shortage to get a licensed plumber in there to move some lines around. Apparently, they're just backed up and tough to get one in there, but I'm told by Josh that shouldn't be a problem. And then, as I said, 5 of the 6 projects to be completed are very small, short lines that they don't expect to have any issues with, and then there's one longer one that we better finish by the end of this year, or it's on us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no additional questions, I would move that we approve Elton Gas Company's 2023 project list and accept the proposed surcharges for filing. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved. Mr. Secretary, let's call the Baltimore Gas item next.
Mr. Chairman, item 9 on the administrative agenda consists of the 2023 STRIDE project list and associated charges of Baltimore Gas and Electric Company.
Good morning, Ms. Garofalo again.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman. For Baltimore Gas and Electric STRIDE, I have with me Kobe Anonim of the Commission's Engineering Division, Mark Riley of the Accounting Investigations Division, and Huilan Lee of the Office of the Executive Director. Baltimore Gas and Electric Company has filed its proposed STRIDE project list for 2023 and its associated surcharges in compliance with Order Number 88714, issued May 30th, 2018, in case number 9468. The surcharges are set to become effective January 1, 2023. In 2023, BGE expects to abandon or replace approximately 55 miles of gas main, including 48 miles of cast iron and bare steel main, as well as 7 miles of coated steel main, plus 7,702 gas services. The STRIDE revenue, monthly STRIDE surcharges have been set at the cap, and staff recommends the Commission approve BGE's project list and accept for filing the revised STRIDE calculations. Mr. Anonim, Mr. Riley, and Ms. Lee are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you again to you and your team. Good morning, Mr. Herson.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Daniel Herson for Baltimore Gas and Electric Company. Good morning, Commissioners. I have with me several team members. I think the most veteran STRIDE team members that we have. They've all been involved in STRIDE since the beginning. I don't have a formal presentation. I want to thank Kobe and his team for their analysis. You have our project list. Next year we're going to continue to focus on removal of the low pressure gas mains and services, cast iron and bare steel. We're pleased to report we're going to complete the replacement of the pre-1970 3/4-inch high-pressure steel services, which historically has been our riskiest asset. We're also looking to catch up on any delays from 2022 projects and complete all new and continuing multi-year projects. I personally am looking forward to not having to utter the words supply chain delays next year, so we'll see how that goes, but we are starting to see some improvements there. So I am here with our team to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the bench, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Mr. Herson, just a comment. My thanks to Baltimore Gas and Electric for their continued aggressive replacement of low-pressure main. I am of the personal belief that it contributes greatly to the safety of the citizens of this state, which is part of our mandate. So thank you to the company.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Bubar.
Thank you. This is just a question for you, Mr. Herson. So there'll be no more STRIDE filings, I think, after this, and note that everything will be handled through rate cases. So I was just wondering, can you give an assessment of where you think the company is in updating the infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the questions, Commissioner. Just a slight adjustment to your comment. We will continue to be making STRIDE filings related to our STRIDE 2 plan. Next year is the last year of that STRIDE 2 plan. So we're going to be continuing to make these STRIDE filings through next year and then probably into the first quarter of 2024 as well, so that there will still be some wrap-up of that surcharge mechanism. And, we're going to continue to do the exact same type of asset replacement work. I want to be crystal clear here that just because we're planning on moving this work into the MYP process, that's not going to change anything with respect to our work plans or, what assets we're looking to replace. It's just simply a change in how we recover the costs associated with that. I will let my team correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that we're still on pace, just as we were when we proposed our STRIDE 2 plan. We had some delays in 2022 because of the supply chain issues, but like I said, we're hoping to catch up in 2023. So I don't believe we're going to be deviating from our, initial plan. So we're still on track.
Thank you, and thank you for that correction.
Sure.
Seeing no additional questions, I would move that we approve the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company's 2023 project list and accept the proposed surcharges for filing. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
Aye.
I vote aye. The motion is approved.
Mr. Chairman, item number 8 consists of the 2023 STRIDE project list and surcharges of Columbia Gas of Maryland, Inc.
We have one typo that we need to correct. On page 2 of the comments, at the end of the first paragraph, we mistakenly called January 2022 22, but it should be 23.
On page 2?
Page 2. At the end of the first paragraph.
Oh, yeah, January 1st, 2023. Okay. Thank you, Ms.
So-
Gruffalo.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, Annette Garofalo, on behalf of Commission staff, with Carlos Acosta and John Clemenson on behalf of the Commission's Engineering Division, Lucy Shea of the Accounting Investigations Division, and Pam Coates of the Telecommunications, Gas, and Water Division. Columbia has filed its proposed STRIDE project list and associated surcharge in compliance with Order Number 88852, issued August 28, 2018, in case number 9479. The surcharges are set to become effective January 1, 2023. In 2023, in its 2023 STRIDE, Columbia has proposed to initiate and complete 8 main replacement projects under its STRIDE 2 plan. All 8 projects are STRIDE eligible and are to be executed in Hagerstown and Cumberland. Please note that in this filing, the company does not include the Optimane scores that were used in previous filings. According to the filing, due to transitioning to a new software program, Columbia used Optimane and the Uptime MRP software programs. Field evaluations by their personnel and known public works projects such as road repaving and utility upgrade to select projects for 2023. The company proposes to replace approximately 4.4 miles of priority pipe, specifically bare steel, at an estimated cost of $17.3 million. Under the commission-approved settlement that governs Columbia's STRIDE 2, the company would have to replace an additional 3.6 miles of priority pipe. Priority pipe for Columbia is cast iron pipe, wrought iron pipe, and bare steel. Unfortunately, in this filing, the company did not explain how it would accomplish the committed 8 miles of priority pipe replacements in 2023. In fact, through September 30th, 2022, the company retired 11,251 feet, or 2.1 miles of priority pipe, out of 33,991 feet, or 6.4 miles of priority main, that the company estimated it would replace that year. The company at that time indicated that it would perform additional miles of priority pipe replacement as part of the new STRIDE projects. Staff recommends the company, within 30 days of approval of the project list, provide an update as to how the company will accomplish its 8 miles of priority pipe replacement commitment in 2023. The corrected annual STRIDE filing for 2023 calculates, is based on the 2023 main investments forecasted to cost $17,338,000. And this amount is lower than the amount set forth in Columbia's STRIDE 2 proposal for case number 9479. It's without error, consistent with the proposed project list. Table 10 in staff's comments presents the current and proposed monthly surcharges and proposed surcharge caps by customer class using the same revenue requirement. The annual STRIDE surcharge for each customer class may not exceed the surcharge cap for that customer class. And since the proposed surcharges without the caps exceed the proposed surcharge caps. The proposed surcharge rate for each customer class is defined by the cap. Mr. Acosta, Mr. Clemenson, Ms. Shea, and Ms. Coates are available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Garofalo. We'll now turn to counsel for Maryland Office of People's Counsel.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Michael Sammartino on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. OPC recommends that the Commission deny its approval of Columbia's proposed 2023 STRIDE project list. You have our filed comments before you, so I'd like to limit my comments this morning to emphasize 3 points. First, a company's annual project list must be based on the priorities in its Commission-approved STRIDE plan. This Commission's approval of a STRIDE plan constitutes approval of a proposed scope of work and spend. And in settling case 9479, Columbia agreed to focus its STRIDE 2 work on replacing bare steel and cast iron main, and in reaching a settlement agreement with staff and OPC, agreed to replace those assets at a specific rate each year within a certain cost. Columbia is now proposing to alter the scope of its work in this project list by replacing less than 8 miles of cast iron and bare steel and more than 10 miles of other contingent main, this being vintage coated steel and plastic main. This project list deviates from the agreed upon priorities in the company's STRIDE 2 plan and the scope of work that the settling parties testified, including OPC, were reasonable and that the Commission approved in case 9479. Second, in seeking approval of this project list, Columbia is asking the Commission to functionally revise its STRIDE plan. Columbia's STRIDE 2 plan expressly states that it's focused on replacement of bare steel and cast iron main, and its replacement work may sometimes include replacing vintage mains, coated steel, and pre-1982 plastic. Columbia adding these sometimes assets to its STRIDE 2 program is effectively expanding the scope of work and rewrites the terms of the STRIDE 2 plan that the settling parties agreed to and this Commission approved. Lastly, in seeking to revise its STRIDE plan, Columbia is requesting to amend the settlement agreement after 4 years of all parties to it operating under a shared understanding of what the terms of that agreement means. Staff's comments this morning recognize the 8-mile target for replacing cast iron and bare steel, and explicitly asks the company how it will achieve that. And for the past 4 years of STRIDE 2, Columbia's project lists have expressly acknowledged this 8-mile target for bare steel and cast iron replacement. And in 2021 and in 2022, when it could not meet that target, the company proposed to do additional work outside of STRIDE solely to satisfy that condition. Columbia's comments filed in this proceeding recognize that it only decided to revisit the interpretation of the settlement agreement after it concluded that it was unable to comply with the settlement agreement's terms. And in effect, in other words, Columbia is requesting to amend the settlement agreement without seeking the consent of the parties to it, purely because the company can't comply with it. OPC maintains that for these reasons, this Commission should deny its approval of its project list, and we appreciate your consideration of our comments, and I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Sammartino. Very succinct summary. Why don't you take a seat at the table, and then we'll hear from Mr. Gallagher, and then we'll have questions.
Sure.
Counsel for NiSource.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Ted Gallagher on behalf of Columbia Gas of Maryland. As I stand here today, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they knew all along. I have to acknowledge that this is a departure from the project list that we have provided in the past. As we explained in our comments, we're creating the project list for the upcoming year and looking at the economics involved and looking at an extra $15 to $20 million worth of expenditures to get to this 8 miles of cast iron and bare steel. And in light of that, and in light of the Commission's concerns about the cost of rolling STRIDE projects into rate base that we saw in the order approving the settlement, we internally we're saying, how can we get this done? Can we look at this again? And when you look at the settlement, and I know we have been operating under the bare steel cast iron 8 mile paradigm for the entire time of the STRIDE 2, but when we looked at the language again, it does not say that. So in light of that, we determined that rather than create this STRIDE, non-STRIDE dichotomy that we've been dealing with over the last few years, where the non-STRIDE projects are not factored into the cost, but they're counted towards the mileage, and then eventually those assets are rolled into rate base when we file our next base rate proceeding. We thought it would be better in the customer's best interest and in addressing the safety of our system to go by the black letter of the settlement and attempt to include the pre-1982 plastic retirements and pre-71 coated steel. Now, Mr. Sammartino, he described those facilities as non-contingent main, and that's just not true. Non-contingent main is a facility that is basically a casualty of a project. It wouldn't necessarily have to be retired on its own because it still has a useful life. But due to the economics and the operational necessity of a particular project, it gets retired. These are not contingent mains. These are not contingent facilities. These are facilities that must be retired in the interest of Columbia improving its system, and therefore are eligible infrastructure under the statute. And again, I acknowledge we are attempting to do something we haven't done before, but we believe that it is consistent with the settlement. In addition to that, assuming that the Commission does not find our arguments well taken, I want to note that the settlement provides that Columbia's replacement pace for the years 2019 through 2023 will be 8 miles per year, totaling 40 miles by the end of 2023. So if we take the 4.4 miles that are in the 2023 submission by Columbia, and you add it to what has been done up till the end of 2023, and I can stand here today and say that I have confirmed that the 8.06 of cast iron that was in the company's 2023 plan has been completed. So when you add those, you add the 4.4 miles to the prior retirements, we get to 36.66. And therefore, Columbia misses its projected pace by 2/3 of a mile per year over the life of the program. Therefore, even if the 8 miles requirement is limited to cast iron and bare steel, Columbia submits that it has substantially complied with that obligation. I would also note, and as we've explained in our last couple of rate cases, we have done with cast iron. There is no more cast iron in our system to retire, so that just leaves bare steel. And we believe that the pre-82 plastic and pre-71 coated steel are a good proxy for that material to be counted towards the 8 miles. We're looking to improve our system in a cost-effective manner. And even though our filing is not the same as it has been in prior years, by the black letter of the settlement, we believe that it complies and should be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. I think you emphasized that point probably one too many times.
Sorry.
Although if I was a lawyer, I would emphasize the black letter of the contract as well. I think Mr. Sammartino was on point that he extracted a concession from Columbia Gas that this 2023 project list deviates from the priorities in case number 9479, and you acknowledge that, correct?
No, because
You did. You did. Tell me why you didn't.
in my comments, I noted that in our approved IRIS, it has the focus on bare steel and cast iron, but it also includes those other materials. That's in the approved IRIS.
I'm not disagreeing with you there. Disagreeing with you on the fact that I believe you conceded that this project list for 2023 deviates from prior years.
It deviates from the prior submissions from the first 4 years of Stride 2. Yes, it is different.
And hence, counsel for Columbia Gas went back to the settlement agreement and attachment A and gave that document a pretty good scrub. Is that right?
Yeah, we looked at that.
No.
I wouldn't be filing something if I didn't think it was legal. So
I would expect nothing less. Mr. Sammartino, is your recommendation all that different from staff's recommendation?
It is, Your Honor. So staff's recommendation, you could look at it one way as essentially, for lack of a better term, seeking a waiver of a certain settlement condition. And this condition, if you read the settlement, there's two conditions in there that the parties agreed to that limit, that apply to the company's annual scope of work. The first is this 8 mile of cast iron bare steel replacement target, and the second is the budget. And we recognize, in this filing that Columbia is within its approved budget. If it goes and if it comes back and proposes to do additional work just to meet the 8 mile target outside of Stride, it's spending additional ratepayer money that will be recovered from ratepayers solely to satisfy a condition of Stride. So it's effectively inflating the overall Stride asset spend. And earlier this year, when Washington Gas came in and requested that this commission apply projects that were funded outside of Stride to its Stride mileage count, this commission denied that request. This is almost analogous to that sort of.
So your position is just to deny the entire request, have the utility come back and propose a new project list.
Yeah, that's correct, Your Honor. The utility can always come back and file a revised 2023 project list, or if it seeks to change the priorities of its Stride 2 plan, it can come in and file a brand new plan.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to respond in a moment to Mr. Gallagher's argument, which is a strong argument that if you look at page probably 5, 6, and 7 of attachment A, that he has the black letter of the law on his side, but that'll be the next question. I want to ask a question to staff first. Well, the staff is conferring.
Just pointing out something we had earlier. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Miss Garofalo, Mr. Gallagher responded on December 5th with his response basically waiving the attachment and saying, whoa, 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 even though we've been working on bare steel and cast iron, if you look in the attachment, in the black letter, there was some contingency for lots of things. Council did a good job packing this settlement agreement with items such as aging pressure reduction stations, coated steel material, and plastic material. How do we get around Mr. Gallagher's argument that this was not envisioned at the point where the commission years ago approved of this settlement agreement?
I'm going to let my engineers talk in just a minute, but I just want to say that we think the settlement, that going back to the black letter of the settlement in the 5th year of the Stride program is perhaps not appropriate because this has been an ongoing issue for Columbia, and we have found it in our hearts, so to speak, to accept things that need to be replaced, the things that Mr. Gallagher has named. But we have asked to know about them up front. But I would really like my engineers to address that.
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Garofalo. I think not appropriate is probably an adjective Mr. Sammartino Mr. Sammartino, I always want to add additional letters to your last name, would agree with. Good morning, Mr. Acosta.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. That's correct. Sometimes the company is replacing different assets, like a pre-1982 plastic, pre-1971 coated steel. What happened is, in the original filing, Mr. Davison testimony in case 9479 is specifically saying that the priority pipe of Colombia Gas, it is the cast iron pipe, bare steel pipe, and the wrought steel.
And this was testimony of Mr. Davidson?
Davis.
Who is he? He was a witness for the company?
Yes, in case 9479 is the attachment D, and in the page 6 of his testimony, he's talking about priority pipe, and he's talking about the amount of pipe that they will replace in the strike 2019 to 2023. At this point in his testimony, he was asking to replace 42.5 miles every year of this pipe. I'm sorry, 42.5 miles during the 5 years. So after the agreement, the attachment A, which is the plan for the strike 2 Colombia Gas, they decide or they agree to replace 40 miles every 5 years, and only 8 miles of priority pipe under the strike. So we agree that they were doing this during the second strike and the first strike, 8 miles in average of the priority pipe. This year is different. They are trying to do only 4.4 miles, and we recommend if they complete the 8 miles in another means, like a non-strike, we will be okay with that. However, the new filing is talking about other assets that they are considered as a priority, or I have some confusion in that. So basically, we recommend that for safety and reliability, the pipe, which is the priority pipe, should be replaced as soon as possible.
Thank you. I think the 4.4 remaining miles is a reflection that they're running out of cast iron and bare steel to replace. Is that right, Mr. Gallagher?
Yeah, we have, at the beginning of the program, you can create a large project that has lots of it in there. But as we've picked off the low-hanging fruit, now you've got little pockets of it. So it becomes very costly to make little projects out of these to make up the 8 miles. But I would say, we're not looking at this going, this bare steel doesn't have to be addressed right now. We're doing the scoring and we're doing the analysis. If it needs to be retired, it is being retired. But first generation plastic in our DIMP is now a top 5 risk, and it has risen as a risk, and it has a comparable risk for leakage as bare steel does.
Mr. Sammartino, before I turn to my colleagues for questions, the question for you on the table is how do we get around Mr. Gallagher's interpretation? Because I do think, I agree with staff, I agree with you that it's inappropriate in the last year of a STRIDE program to make a change like this. But he does seem to have language that the Commissioner improved on his side.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's an excellent question. And I'd like to direct you to the Public Utilities Article, Section 4210, and the definition of what a project is under STRIDE. The STRIDE statute defines project as an eligible infrastructure replacement project proposed by a gas company in a plan filed under this section. So OPC, looking at that language, we believe that there's two conditions in there for a project to be eligible for recovery through a company's STRIDE 2 plan. The first is obviously that the project that's being proposed meets the statutory criteria set forth in the STRIDE law. The second is that the proposed project complies with the company's plan, that it was filed and approved by the Commission. So while STRIDE eligibility is certainly a sufficient condition and is a bare minimum for any project that the company seeks to recover through the surcharge. Recovery under the surcharge is limited to infrastructure that complies with its plan.
And this does not arguably, the plastic replacement doesn't arguably comply with the plan in spirit, I agree, but the settlement agreement and the attachment make a specific reference to the material that Mr. Gallagher is attempting to defend. Is there any way further around that? I appreciate your cite to the statute, but Mr. Gallagher is arguing that these are all STRIDE eligible projects.
Your Honor, in the comments that OPC filed on the company's 2019 project list, we expressed similar concerns about the replacement of these other assets, and that our comments were more project specific focused, but the projects that we took issue with were those that comprised of less than 50% of this priority pipe. So projects that were not focused on priority pipe, but were focused in targeting other vintage assets. So we maintain that you can look at the company's project, the list that they filed for this year. If you look at the projects in the aggregate, either it has to be majority, at minimum, it has to be 8 miles of cast iron, as approved in the settlement agreement, or it has to be a majority cast iron or bare steel.
Thank you. I'll turn to my colleagues for questioning, starting with Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gallagher, let me start with a discussion with you, if I may. So the company, it sounds to me, it appears to me, decided for economic reasons and other purposes to take a harder look at the settlement agreement and decided to maybe modify its prior understanding of the previous 4 years of that settlement agreement because of that. Is that fair?
That is fair.
Okay. What level of outreach did you make to the settling parties prior to the instant filings to discuss your company's reinterpretation of the settlement agreement?
3 weeks before we filed this, I reached out to staff and I described this, and I heard nothing back from them. And with that silence, I thought there was no objection.
Well, that's a dangerous interpretation, Mr. Gallagher. How about the Office of People's Counsel?
I did not.
Why not?
I know how vehemently opposed they are to STRIDE anyway, and I didn't think there would be an avenue for resolving this with them.
Yeah, but you have a legally binding settlement agreement that the parties agreed to, and you reinterpreted it to your favor, or maybe to the company's favor for economic reasons. You already admitted to that.
Well, I'm not. It's also the customer's favor.
Well,
we're looking out for.
the
we come in for rate cases every year. And
But the
that's
Office of People's Counsel has the customer's interest at heart. They're the legal entity of the state that has the customer's well-being, both economic and safety and otherwise, and they're a settling party to an agreement that you all signed off to. Why didn't you reach out to them? I don't get that. Because you reinterpreted, because you think it's for the benefit of the customer? That's a little hard for me to take as a corporate monopoly.
I'm not sure I would. I'm conceding to the reinterpret, and I
Well,
don't
you
wanna
said,
split-
Ike said it, you
I
said
don't
yes,
wanna
that's
split
fair.
hairs here, but I mean we certainly revisited what the settlement requires.
I know, I'm not a lawyer. Lawyers like to hone in on the reinterpretation of the black letter of the law, and that's appropriate and it's important, and I acknowledge that. But in my layman's understanding, an agreement's an agreement. Now, all of a sudden, it's a long-standing agreement that everybody's been operating under, and all of a sudden it's changed. and it's changed unilaterally. Unilaterally. That's a hard pill for me to swallow. I think the Office of People's Counsel makes a good argument that you went off the reservation and unilaterally decided to do something different. What say you?
Well, I wouldn't say unilaterally because of the discussion I attempted to have with staff on this, but I will concede that we did not consult with OPC.
Attempted discussion is not a discussion, sir. So I appreciate your attempt, but there could be a lot of reasons why that didn't come back. Did you follow up?
No.
Okay. Mr. San Martino, let me ask you a question. You used the term a plan approved, a plan and a spend approved by the commission. That doesn't portend the Office of People's Counsel conveying that we approve the prudency of any of these spends, does it?
No, Your Honor, it does not. And we recognize that the prudency review will occur will occur once these assets are at the time of the next rate base.
Attempted to be moved into to base rates. Okay, fair enough. Mr. San Martino, remind me, when was the last base rate case of Columbia?
Earlier this year, Your Honor.
Okay, so do you remember the case number on that?
9680, I believe.
Okay, so it wasn't 9479, which is the provocateur of the settlement agreement, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so last year, is that base rate case approved by us?
Yes, it is, Your Honor, and I believe the compliance filing with the revised tariff is on the administrative agenda for next week.
Fair enough. And did the surcharge get re-zeroed as a result of that base rate case?
Yes, it did, Your Honor.
And this instant filing takes it back to $2?
That's correct, Your Honor.
I'm having a hard time with all of this. Why, Mr. Gallagher, enlighten me why we so quickly went back to the cap of the surcharge.
That is what has been the process for the entire time of the Stride 2 program.
Well, other companies kind of incrementally approach the cap, it seems to me, in my experience.
That's what under the settlement, the approved amounts of expenditures, when you run it through the rate calculation, you get to the cap.
Well, you don't think that's a prudency review, do you? The
Absolutely not.
settlement-
Every foot of pipe we put in the ground is subject to commission's review.
All right, fair enough. Does staff agree with that? That all of these stride filings, these instant stride filings, are subject to further prudency review?
They are, in the sense that the projects are paid for, at least partially, by the surcharge, and when completed, are added into rate base.
So,
To the extent that is a prudency review is done for anything that's new to rate base, they are.
so Public Utilities Article 4-210 is cited by council, and the settlement agreement and the approved project list, none of that constitutes a prudency review, is that correct? None of it. Only a base rate case performs a prudency review, right?
Well, certainly, the commission has to be sitting and deciding on prudency.
So
And
my
we don't-
point is, we're not pre-approving any of these
No,
expenditures.
oh, absolutely not. No.
I want to, does Office of People's Counsel agree to that? We're not in any of these documents, either the Code of Maryland or Comar or the settlement agreement or these project lists and the instant filings of any of these companies. None of them constitute a base rate case prudency review.
Yeah, that's correct, Your Honor.
Does the company agree with that?
Yes, any piece of pipe we put in the ground is subject to a prudency review.
Fair
in
enough.
a base rate proceeding that's based on a historic test year.
So what will the company do if the commission were to decide to follow the Office of People's Counsel recommendation to deny? What will the company do as a result of such a decision, should it be forthcoming?
That is a discussion that I would have to have with my client. Whether to submit a new program or, and I haven't even discussed this with my client, but one possibility might be letting it go and availing ourselves of a make-whole proceeding, which we haven't been able to do because you can't move Stride assets into rate base in a make-whole proceeding. So, but this is off the top of my head. My clients who are watching this right now might be going, "Shut up, don't say that." So I haven't discussed this with them.
Fair enough. Mr. Chairman, maybe the company cites the settlement agreement, black letter of the settlement agreement, with good cause, but I have a hard time seeing how one party unilaterally departs from a settlement agreement without the consent of the other settling parties. I'm having a real hard time with that, and tend to agree with the Office of People's Counsel in this matter. So, as hard as that may be.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Gallagher, I saw some confused faces on the left side of the room when you stated that you made contact with staff. Can you let us know who on staff you made contact with or attempted to make contact with?
I sent an email to Ms. Garofalo on October the 10th.
Okay. By the look on Ms. Garofalo's face, either she did not read it or did not see it.
Well, no, I'm going to respond. So I've had several conversations by telephone with Mr. Gallagher. They about Stride. They, in general, had to do with Stride. The what I would call the aftermath of Stride. When year one is completed, and you didn't have quite enough bare steel. And you add something else, does staff count that? And we have in the past. And I think, frankly, that's a little bit what we're asking for right here. If the 10th is Friday, I did receive a text from Mr. Gallagher saying if I wanted to talk, give him a call, and he gave me his cell phone number. I think that is the only call I have, to the extent it's a call, that I've received and not returned.
Thank you. I would note that 10th is a federal holiday. It was Monday, Columbus Day, and
Oh, yeah.
you weren't working that day. I'll turn to my colleagues for additional questions. Commissioner Bubar.
Thank you. This is tough. I really agree with some of the issues that OPC has raised, and I too went back and looked at Section 4-210 and thought, is it consistent with it? So, but then when I went back and looked at Attachment A, as the company notes, so I have a question, but I'm going to read from Attachment A. It says, the company's existing, Attachment A to the settlement agreement, the company's existing and current infrastructure replacement program is focused on replacing bare steel and cast iron piping. However, it sometimes includes the replacement of plastic material and coated steel material because some vintage plastic material can be prone to failure, and early coating material used on steel piping can become ineffective, and it is better to simply replace than recoat. The company's 2019 to 2023 plan proposes to use this same approach. So I'm trying to understand the inconsistency that we're talking about is, I guess, the projects in the plan prior to 2023 only had cast and wrought iron. Is that the inconsistency? And I'm trying to, and I guess I have a question for staff, if you can just clarify your perspective on how that language, which basically does seem to lay out that they can include plastic in their plan, even though they may not have, is consistent or inconsistent with the agreement.
So Mr. Acosta will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for our purposes today, we were hesitant to recommend total approval of the project list until it was complete because it was 4 miles or 4.5 miles and it was not 8 miles. And we were asking for what the other, what else would be in there.
Right.
But is that right? That may not be quite right. I'm hearing something.
The main driving of Stride 2 in Colombia is replace 8 miles of priority pipe. They were doing that. Under Stride or out of Stride, some portions. The last 2 years they did maybe 0.9 miles, I think, in 2021, and something more in 2022. So the point is, they are replacing the priority pipe, and in that efforts also they replace other pipe that they need to replace for, because the system needs to be replaced in this way. It's very difficult to replace only the bare steel or the cast iron without replacing the other pipes. So the main driving is to replace the 8 miles of pipe every year. They are not doing that this year.
With the subsequent filing that came in on December 5th, they explained how they would get to the 8 miles. Is your perspective that that's inconsistent with what's in the agreement?
Yeah, they are explaining that it's economical reasons, but they are not telling anything about safety. We, as an engineering, we're looking for the safety of the system. And if they offer to replace every year the 8 miles of this priority pipe, I think that they have to respect that agreement.
So are you saying that the additional miles that they proposed in the December 5th filing, you don't agree? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm trying to understand that those do not address safety concerns?
They are not telling us the additional pipe that they are putting, or they are about to replace our priority pipe, this other pipe, which is going away from the terms of the agreement in the settlement.
Okay, all right.
That's it.
Thank you.
Additional questions, Commissioner Linton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a couple questions. I have one for the Office of People's Counsel. So, Mr. Sammartino, good morning. In your comments, you noted that Columbia estimates that if they were to stick to the terms of the settlement as you've interpreted them, that it would cost another $15 to $20 million to achieve the full 8 miles for this portion of their Stride project. That's on top of the budget they've already proposed. So in a sense, it's an increase for the customers of Columbia. In light of the fact that the company is proposing a different approach, where they're still reaching at, they're still getting in the range of the 8 miles, but just not in the same way that they've done it for the past 4 years. Is that something that the OPC is still comfortable with, that the customers would have to pay another 15 to 20 million just to get that extra 4 miles?
Thank you for the question, Your Honor. OPC recognizes that, and in a sense agrees with the company's decision not to include that $15 to $20 million of extra work in those associated projects in its project list for 2023. And the reason we recommended this commission deny approval of the company's project list is precisely because of the way it's been attempting to meet that 8-mile target for the past, I believe, the past 2 years, where it's done supplemental work outside of Stride for an additional cost. And given that the makeup of the company's distribution system and the progress that they've made on the replacement of this priority pipe over the past 4 years, it's our position that if they can no longer comply with the settlement agreement, their Stride 2 plan, as filed with the commission, has run its course, and it would be more appropriate for them to file a new plan that reflects their shift in priorities.
Okay, so now I'll ask the lawyer question now, since we're lawyers here and talking about these things. You've You've acknowledged that the company, the last 2 years at least, hasn't adhered to the terms of the settlement. They've been doing some work outside of Stride to reach the 8 miles. Mr. Acosta has also noted that just a few moments ago in his comments. Why hasn't this section of the settlement already been waived when it comes to attempting to challenge the fact that they're not doing it here for what it would be the 3rd year in a row?
Your Honor, in a sense, the Commission's acceptance of staffs or of those prior project lists, in a sense, it waived one of the settlement conditions for each of those years. OPC, I recognize that OPC did not file comments in 2021 or 2022 making this express request, and our concern and the reason why we're taking the position we are this year is because, unlike in prior years, the company is explicitly asking to reinterpret the terms of the settlement agreement.
Hasn't that happened already? Even if it was just for a smaller number? And by smaller number, I mean smaller number of miles. Because they didn't reach 8 years in with the last 2 years they haven't reached it. So how's this year any different just because of the number of miles?
Your Honor, I believe the difference is that the company came back in in 2021 and 2022 and elected to do outside work just to meet that requirement. And given that the company is significantly short of the target this year, and the cost of that additional work, that temporary waiver, so to speak, of the settlement conditions that this commission approved in 2021 and 2022, we believe is no longer appropriate.
So you believe that they were in violation for the last 2 years of the settlement, but the fact that the People's Council, the staff, no one challenged it, there was no waiver of your right to challenge it, and the commission just granted a waiver, which I guess we didn't know we were granting, but we granted a waiver of that provision for the first 2 years, but 3rd year is not acceptable.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. So for Mr. Gallagher, following up on a question that Commissioner O'Donnell asked you earlier, when you noted that you had not reached out to the other parties, specifically OPC, to determine, to let them know that, I guess now we're calling it a waiver of some kind, that this waiver that it extended for 2 years is now going to be going for a 3rd year. It seems to me that both the People's Council and the staff are kind of asking for something similar. It's not quite the same, but the staff is suggesting that additional filing get made so that we understand more about how you're going to reach this 8-mile goal. And the People's Council acknowledges that you can make an additional filing at any time if this STRIDE plan is not adopted. So tell me what the impact is to the company if it is not adopted today. I understand that you haven't discussed it with the client yet, but I'm just trying to understand, are there projects currently moving forward that are impacted? Is there people standing by ready to start working? Are there permits that have been adopted? Help me understand.
I'm sorry I cut you off there.
Sure.
Commissioner, I believe that the projects are scheduled, and I think we intend to proceed with the work. But I don't, that's not 100%. I don't know what contingency plans we have in the event that the request is denied. Certainly, we won't be charging a $2 surcharge come January 1 until such, and we wouldn't have a STRIDE surcharge until such time as we had an approved STRIDE plan.
So of the projects then that are, we'll say, in queue, on standby to move forward under STRIDE, if this project is not, if this plan is not adopted, those projects, do they proceed with the understanding that you could recover them later, or do you just say, okay, they're not under STRIDE, so we'll do something else, let the employees go?
I believe that they would proceed and that they would become part of rate base in our next base rate proceeding up until the end of the test year. Just, and I would note that, our commitment to replacing infrastructure that needs to be replaced predates the STRIDE statute. We were already doing this stuff a couple of years before this came along. So, our commitment to doing this is 2 decades old, and we intend to continue it. But Commissioner, you had mentioned that the question from Commissioner O'Donnell about us not conferring with OPC with respect to this reinterpretation of the agreement. I would note that in Mr. Sammartino's comments, he describes at the bottom of page 3 a filing that they made in 2019 having to do with the ratios between the contingency pipe or what they said that at a minimum the STRIDE should consist of 50% mains of material approved through the current company's current 5-year STRIDE plan. In 2019, nobody from OPC called anybody at Columbia Gas before they filed those comments, and that would appear to me to be a new requirement under the settlement. So our course of dealing over the 5 years hasn't been to consult with each other every time we have a different interpretation about what the requirements are.
I appreciate that, Mr. Gallagher. I'm not sure how far that gets us today, but I certainly I understand what you're saying. I understand your reasoning for saying it, but well, I didn't have anything else to ask anyway, so I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner, it doesn't get us far at all. Commissioner Linton, Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered the waterfront here. But Mr. Sammartino, I did want to just ask, directly. You talked about an inflating effect if we did both the non, I guess, cast iron along with this. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that? Because it seems at the end of the day, if the other non-cast iron projects are necessary for safety, they will have to be done, and so will the ratepayer impact in the end be the same?
Thank you for the question, Your Honor. In a sense, at the end of the day, if whatever work the company proposes to complete, whether it's through their STRIDE plan or outside of STRIDE, given that they've been filing annual rate-based cases, it's ultimately whatever work they complete will be subject to a prudence review and, if approved by this commission, added to their rate base. So you could look at it in one sense, if they do the work, they'll get to recover it at some point. What OPC is concerned about is when the parties agreed to settle the STRIDE 2 case and the commission approved their STRIDE 2 plan, that was all under an acceptance or a belief that the company would be doing 8 miles of work that targeted bare steel and cast iron within a certain amount of spend. And so if you look at their STRIDE 2 plan for 2023, that would be 8 miles of cast iron and bare steel for $18 million. If they're proposing to only do 4.4 miles, within that budget amount, and then adding other work to meet that 8-mile target for a total of 15 to 20 million extra, then they're just adding the limitation on their scope of work that OPC agreed was in the interest of ratepayers would essentially nullify that limitation, because it would the company would just be spending more ratepayer money to complete the same amount of work that it said it was going to do for a lesser cost.
Great, thank you, understood. Okay, I don't really have any other questions. I think, again, a lot of questions have already been asked, but I will be supporting your position. I don't know what the motion is going to be, but I'll be supporting your position, if for no other reason that you as a settling party were not consulted or given the respect to have that discussion ahead of time. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have one final question before we move to motions. Mr. Gallagher, you performed a very thorough review of the settlement agreement and attachment A. Within those documents, is there a definition for priority pipe?
Sitting here today, I can't say that off the top. I'd have to read it again. I'd have to look through it.
That would be key to your position. I looked at it. I didn't see it. Let me just say,
And I don't believe there is.
okay. Mr. Sammartino or Ms. Garofalo, did you come across a defined term of what priority pipe is in the settlement agreement documents? Again, I didn't see any, but
Not in the settlement agreement.
Yeah, Your Honor, if I,
Wait,
I-
wait, perhaps.
if I may respond, Your Honor.
you may, and then we'll get back to staff.
Thank you. OPC's review of the settlement agreement, the term priority pipe is not expressly defined in the settlement. We believe that that term, as it's been, included in the STRIDE project list filings and comments, for all 4 years of the company's STRIDE 2 plan, we believe that the course of performance of the parties is what defines that term.
That's a good response, and strong lawyering today. Ms. Garofalo, did you find the definition, or do you agree with Mr. Sammartino that it does not exist?
I think it might exist, but may not exist in the settlement. Is that attachment A?
Yes, and this is, yeah, attachment A. John Clemenson for staff. On page 6, it's line 10. Is there a true definition as in priority pipe means this?
Yes.
No. Basically, what you get into in that paragraph, it talks about the total mileage for replacement of bare steel, cast iron, and wrought iron is previously approved STRIDE plan was 37.8 miles for the period from 2014-2018. Then it goes, as shown below in Table C, Columbia proposes to accelerate its replacement of priority pipelines by increasing the projected 5-year replacement projection to 42.5 miles. So it's not as in like it means this, it's kind of more of an inferred.
Thanks. That's the problem that we've come across today. I agree with staff that the reinterpretation, a word Mr. Gallagher used a moment ago, is inappropriate. A word Ms. Garofalo used a few moments ago. As to what constitutes an eligible STRIDE project is unfortunately in my opinion, for staff and for OPC, it's unfortunately very broad in attachment A. And at the end of the day, I believe that this commission is governed with, under this settlement agreement that the commission has formally approved. So I'm going to make a motion to approve Columbia Gas of Maryland's 2023 project list and accept the proposed surcharges and tariff revisions for filing. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
I do not support that.
Commissioner Linton.
I would vote no.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
No, because I believe, although it was a departure maybe from the settlement and the practice had existed for 2 years, for me the deciding point here is the failure to submit a filing that completes what to me is the substantive portion of the agreement, which is 8 miles of replacement per year, and so I vote no.
And Commissioner Richard.
No, and I think I already stated my reason.
I vote aye. My motion fails by a vote of 4-1. At this point, I'll call a motion based on staff's proposal. I would move that we approve the company's 2023 project list, that we accept the proposed surcharges and tariff revisions for filing, and that we direct the company within 30 days of approval of the projects to provide an update as to how the company will accomplish its 8 miles of priority pipe replacement commitment. The vote begins with Commissioner Bubar.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
I would vote no on that one.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Richard.
If I understood correctly, I think the position of OPC on that was that they did not support staff, so for that reason, I will vote no.
Correct, Commissioner Richard. I vote aye. On a vote of 3-2, the motion carries. Seeing no additional business on today's administrative meeting, this meeting is adjourned.